Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. Land acquisition remains the biggest challenge and obstacle to the setup of any large-scale project in India, whether for the purpose of manufacturing or otherwise. And that, of course, deters and discourages foreign companies from coming to India and setting up their manufacturing base here. But this problem of land acquisition is not confined to foreign companies only. Even domestic companies face it with the same troubles as foreign companies face it. POSCO's steel project in India suffered because of land acquisition issues, and so was the case with Saudi Aramco's project, which never took off only because of land acquisition issues. But then that happened in the case of Tata Motors also, when it tried to set up its manufacturing plant at Nandigram in West Bengal, and that could never take off because of land related protests, violent protests that were then headed by Mamata Banerjee herself. Or take the case of Vedanta's aluminium project at Niyamgiri in Orissa, that has also proved to be a non-starter only because of land acquisition issues. The fact of the matter is that because of land acquisition matters, either a project gets delayed or it also becomes unviable. Because of public protests, all for political reasons, or because of complicated land laws, or because of land record not being in order, very often there is a huge delay in the acquisition of land, the projects suffer. And on the other hand, because of the fact that under the Land Acquisition and Rehabilitation Act of 2013, we are required to pay much higher prices than the market rates for land being acquired, projects very often become unviable only because the land cost in India is very high. Under this Act of 2013, if you are acquiring any land in a rural area for a project, you end up paying 4 times the market price. And if that project is in an urban land belt, then you end up paying twice the market price. And that makes the entire project to be extremely unviable. Companies very often do not venture only because land cost in India is prohibitively high. The Modi government did try to rectify this position sometime in 2015. It came up with a bill saying that certain projects must be exempted from this Act of 2013, and they were projects related to defense, rural infrastructure, affordable housing and industrial corridors. But while this bill got passed in the Lok Sabha, it did not get passed in the Rajya Sabha. It was ultimately shelved. The central government could do nothing thereafter. Of course, this is a key issue, and 6 state governments after that on their own have provided exemption in their land laws for these kind of projects. After all, we need to ensure that projects take off, and an entrepreneur cannot be compelled to pay such a high price for it. Let me give you an example. Tesla went to China to set up a car manufacturing project. It was able to set up its project merely between July 2018 to Jan 2020. Within 1.5 years, the project took off. And for that project, it needed 210 acres of land. It was able to get that land in a mere 5 months' time, and in 1 year, the factory was ready. The Pudong authority, where this project is located near Shanghai, acquired 210 acres of prime industrial land within a matter of months, handed it over to Tesla, and the project took off, as we said, within a year and a half. And more interestingly, Tesla was able to set up its project in China at 65% less capital expenditure as compared to what it would have paid if it set it up in the US. That's been the kind of competition that India gets when it comes to setting up projects. On the other hand, take the case of Maruti Udyog's project at Hansalpur in Gujarat. That project started somewhere in April 2012, and it is only in February 2017, almost after 5 years, that production commenced. And the key reason was difficulties in getting land. Tesla got its land in China in a matter of months, and Maruti Udyog struggled in India for years before it could take off. It is because of land issues that even the Tata project at Nandigram had to be aborted, and it suffered a loss of 1100 crores. But then, who cares about it? It was an emotive political issue led by Mamata Banerjee herself. It is land acquisition, which is very often a very important consideration for industrialists, for MNCs, for companies to shift their projects to other countries. A recent report had said that Indonesia managed to wean away 27 American companies from China to Indonesia. And what did the Indonesian president do? He set aside 4,000 hectares of industrial land for these companies immediately and said, come and set up your projects here. And they did that. India does not have any such example. We struggle for years to acquire land. And because of that, very often manufacturing projects in India, investments by foreign companies have proved to be a non-starter. There are actually great opportunities for India to attract foreign investment into the country if it gets its land issue in order. Many foreign companies are now adopting a policy of China plus one, as they call it. What they are realizing is that they need to diversify out of China. They cannot only depend on China for their manufacturing, they need an alternate. They have witnessed disruption in their supply chains because of the pandemic, because of the trade war, and they are realizing that just being in China is not good for their business. They also are very clear now that they need to avoid investing in China only. There are too many risks to it, and diversification of manufacturing is the need for the hour. And that's why you have China plus one as their strategy. Further, what these companies are also noticing is that China's advantages of cheap labor and a domestic market are now fading away. And for that, they need to look at a comparable destination, which can be India. There are great opportunities for India to attract companies from UK, USA, Japan, France, Germany, South Korea, Taiwan, and many others in case we are able to get our act in place. The fact is, companies from all these countries are trying to look at alternate destinations for their manufacturing facilities. At the moment, surprisingly, they don't mind a Vietnam or a Cambodia or a Bangladesh or a Myanmar or a Thailand, but they have been hesitating coming to India. And that's because, as we said, land is their first hurdle when they want to set up their base in India. The encouraging news is that the government seems to be seriously seized with this crucial issue, which is land needed for setting up projects in India. The government is reportedly setting up a land bank consisting of 5 lakh hectares spread over 3,390 industrial belts and SEZs all over the country. What the government is setting up is a national land bank portal, and the purpose is to woo investors, both domestic and foreign. This portal will give the location of land available. All land parcels that are available in these industrial belts will be mentioned here, along with all details related to logistics, proximity of utilities, connectivity, etc. And of course, the presumption is that all the land parcels mentioned in this portal would have a clear land title. They propose to also integrate it with GIS related connectivity so that a buyer abroad or anybody sitting anywhere can access the portal, try to shortlist the lands that he has in mind, and thus cut short the time that is involved in buying land. This portal is expected to be launched by the government by December 2020. If this portal becomes a success, if it really helps buyers to zero in on land which is immediately available, it will actually become one of the biggest initiatives and reforms of the government, and it will certainly help foreign companies and domestic companies to start setting up their projects in India. It will also, of course, considerably improve the ease of doing business in the country. Having said this, what would be the larger issue that would come in respect of this portal? If the National Land Bank portal has to be a success, then there are various issues which must be considered. The first is, after having considered or set up a land bank like this, what needs to be ensured and assured is that those who want to buy the land or acquire it are able to do it immediately. Allotment and possession of land which is mentioned in these portals must be immediate, irrespective of the state where it is located. Further, this land bank must give a lease option or an installment option to all those who are not able to buy it and yet need the land. Thus, if you cannot buy the land, you should have a lease option or a rental option, or you should be given payment facility to pay for the land over a period of time. Further, after having acquired the land, it should not happen that your construction or building plans are getting delayed indefinitely. Those plans also must get passed immediately so that the work of setting up the project, of constructing the buildings, etc., starts right away. As we said, we would presume that all the land banks and parcels mentioned in this portal are of clean and clear title such that they can be banked or the buyer is safe. As we said, there needs to be port connectivity. There needs to be easy access to road, rail and air and sea connectivity, and it must be ensured that connectivity is easy. You cannot have a scene where the land is near the port but the roads are non-existent or so bad that it takes hours for the containers to reach the port. We also would want to ensure, and we would presume, that there is going to be adequate security in all these industrial estates where the government is trying to attract investment. Our suggestion would be, give it to the likes of CISF to provide security here such that there is safety of what is invested there and operations are not threatened by antisocial elements or extortionists. It is of course presumed that power and other utilities would be available and so would be proximity to labor. It's only if all these factors are taken into account that this National Land Bank can be a success and we will be able to woo investors into the country. The fact is that there are certain changes taking place worldwide which would certainly help to attract investments into the country to set up manufacturing plants. The likes of Apple have already nudged their major vendors to start setting up bases other than China and to look at India. Its major vendors, which is Foxconn, Winstron and Pegatron, are already in the country and they are expanding their manufacturing facilities in India. Just take the Winstron, a Taiwanese-based vendor of Apple. It already says that its expansion in India at Kolar is taking place such that 10,000 additional jobs will be provided. The Foxconn chairman is on record saying that the days of China being the factory of the world are over. China is not going to be bypassed completely, but its preeminence is going to go down since companies are wanting to shift out of China and start providing for alternates. This shift in thought, this shift in policy is clearly to India's advantage, provided we get our act together in place. According to us, however, land is not the only issue which deters investors from coming to India. We have various other factors which discourage them, and they include arbitrary policy changes in the country, policy changes or policies not being implemented the way they are promised, big gap between what is promised and what is being implemented. Infrastructure deficit remains a discouraging factor. So is the case with ease of doing business, which is not what the government claims to be. And of course, many of foreign companies have suffered because of sanctity of laws and contracts not being maintained by the government. We will need to work on all these. Just land is not going to be enough. And if all these are handled together and improved, you can expect the China plus one policy of MNCs succeeding, and that would be certainly to India's benefit. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.
If you like this video, please share it, and we would love to hear your comments in the comments section down here. Also, please do like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter to get minute-to-minute news updates. For more such shows and videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel.